I'm Beverly Benjamin, and I work with a design studio called COMUZI. I also work at another design studio called Saturday School, who are just or recently launched the Mentoring Black Business program. There at Saturday School, basically, we teach the community the basics of business, support them with networking, etc. And in that role, I am the educational specialist who I'm the person who gets the courses accredited, and I also support the facilitators in ensuring that any activities they do are designed to make sure that they're inclusive for everybody. On the the Mentoring Black Business, I am the project coordinator, so I help to bring everything together. And again, using all my knowledge and skills, lived experience, if you like, to coordinate and get that running as smoothly as possible.
Perfect, thanks so much. And Daniel, would you mind introducing yourself?
No problem at all. Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Chur. I work as a senior service designer and business designer. I've got a portfolio career, so I spend 70% of my time working with large corporations, helping them understand some of their key challenges, working on complex problems, as well as bringing different people from around the organization and outside together to understand how to design with evidence, pretty much. The other 30% of my time I work with startups, especially underrepresented startups, as well as social enterprises.
Thank you, Daniel. And Mia, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Right, okay, hi, I'm Mia Peters. I'm the Digital Service Design Manager at Southwark Council, and I work with different services within the council. Councils typically run about 200 services, and work with them to, I suppose, redesign and the services so that they're much more customer centered by using evidence and user research to do so. I've had a varied career. I've worked in the private sector. I've had a career in marketing and advertising. I've also run my own events business, and I've been a union rep. And so I've done lots of things that have brought me to service design. I don't have a design background, but I do think I've got lots of transferable skills that have led me here and make me a really good designer. And I absolutely am passionate about people, all different kinds of people, having a good experience of services, no matter what their background, their ethnicity, their income levels and everything. And I feel really strongly about that. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's where I see sort of the service design roles almost being like a translator, in that, you know, there are lots of complex things, especially, you know, when you have services that have like statutory, you know, restrictions around them, or, you know, legislative change or something, where you might not have, you know, very much money and everything. And there might be people on one side who, you know, the services just want to solutionize something, and you have to be able to try and speak their language, but also speak the language of design, where you can help them reframe the problem and look at things, like Daniel was saying, through a number of different prisms. And so you open up, you know, sort of a whole world to them that they didn't realize, because you've got the key and you're the translator. So I very much see it like that.
And what excites each of you then about the role of design? Because we're going to go into, you know, where your background, because you've all had really interesting backgrounds to come into this area. But what is it that really excites you about the area of design, and especially now in this current climate? So who would like to start? Daniel.
Yes, thank you. I think what really excites me is that design is being reimagined, and it's not the traditional let's make something pretty, but it's something you can bring into the boardroom. You can bring into a council, for example. You can bring anywhere into a startup. And we're reframing what design means. Sometimes when I work with clients, I don't even use the term design thinking or service design. I just show them the process and the approach, and they think this is amazing. And until I actually say it's service design, they think, oh, is this what it is? This is fantastic. We need to incorporate it. And I think going back to what you said before, we all need to start thinking more like systems thinkers. And I think we can all do it. It's easy enough. We just have to reframe how we look at problems and how long we stay in that aspect of things. So going back to Nia's point, a lot of people like to jump into the solution side of things, but with design especially, let's linger around the problem a little bit more. Maybe we can unearth something that really can create value in the future.
And I think that is one of the reasons, thank you, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited by this panel, is because you have such diverse backgrounds and pathways into this area of design, that it shows that anybody, you know, lots of people can access this. It's not an elitist area. Beverly, could you share what excites you about design?
I think it's about working collaboratively with client partners, seeing something come to life really out of nothing, and being able to produce those end results that everyone is happy with. So basically following that process through from beginning to end kind of really excites me. And the way how people work together as well, in terms of that collaborative working and sharing of ideas and so on, that excites me to, you know, to think, yeah, this is great stuff.
Yeah, there's a real thread of empathy that comes through all of your answers so far, that in order to be a designer, or one of the things that gets you excited about design is this understanding that you need to be empathetic. You need to get into other people's shoes to be able to design for them and with them. Mia, to you, what excites you about design?
I think the fact that I've got a whole load of methods and ways of working that can really sort of help switch the light on for people and help them understand that perhaps it's not such a good way to just solutionize something, to just go straight to a solution. But actually, if you spend time defining the problem space and understanding about users' needs and all the different methods that we use in service design, and actually going through that and, you know, involving people in the process, not just end users, but also the people that are commissioning the service design from you, to involve them in the process, to help them understand, get them to observe what you're doing and be really involved. And then, you know, it seems to switch a light on sometimes, and then they become very strong advocates for what you do to other people. And so you develop this body of evidence by co-producing the way that you work with other people.
I think what you're talking about there, for me anyhow, is about what you do is you demystify the process. You know, you help people to understand that this idea of design is not some secret behind the curtain thing, that actually it's a process that everybody does at some aspect of their lives, and what you do is you've honed some skills and you have a toolkit that enables you to do that. And so thinking about that, given that you all had quite interesting journeys into the service design industry, because, you know, we talked about, when we did the survey, we said there were 63% of people who went to university, nobody said they went to boot camp, 23% were hands-on, 0 from a foundation, and 13% other. I'd like you now to talk about your own journeys into the design world. So just give us a little bit of background into where you came from before. What made you make that decision that this is an area that I want to pivot to, and where you've ended up? So I would like to start with Beverly.
I have quite a varied background, if you like. I'm a more mature, I should say, person. So I started off in a banking institution. That's where I started my career. It developed from that. Went to university. I studied psychology and health science. Then I thought, okay, that's not enough. And so I moved on. I went into education, where I started as a support worker because I had young children working part-time. I liked what they were doing in terms of helping young people. So I studied to be a special needs teacher, so teaching children and young people with specific learning difficulties, not to assess, diagnose, and teach those children with those needs. I moved on from there and I went into local government. After that, I thought, okay, what do I do now? So then I became a qualified mainstream science teacher. So I taught in secondary school for a number of years. Then post-retirement, I thought, well, what can I do with my time? So, and I wanted to understand the world of the young people of today. How do I get to understand how they think, how they learn, become entrepreneurs and stuff like that? So I started working with my son, who runs a design studio. And I basically took it up from there. Transitioning, if you like, into that role, which I found quite easy because of my qualifications and also the skills and the attributes that I had collected over the years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because you've got such a beautiful, varied background, but what were some of the key transferable skills that you found from your background that helped you make that transition into design?
I think it was things like being able to, what should I say, manage your time, simple things, you know, that people wouldn't think that's important, but things like being able to manage your time, being able to work as part of a team, which is very important. Being able to organize, I'll come back to that.
Well, I think that, you know, because I ended up writing them down, but looking at banking, so the idea that, and riffing off some of the conversations we had this morning around the need to understand data in the design industry, is that what you're doing is sometimes you take data and you create stories out of them. Your background in banking, I'm sure, gave you a great foundation for some of that, especially, and then looking at psychology of how you start to really understand people. One of the other things that people mentioned this morning, and then you've already here all mentioned it, was this idea of empathy, that being able to, you know, understanding the way that people think and how they think and they process information, and then being not only just a teacher, but a special education needs teacher as well, I think would have been a great grounding for bringing those skills and recognizing that they are transferable, because I think that that's a lot of the problem sometimes, that people don't recognize. If they don't understand what the industry is or what the potential roles could be, they don't see how their previous background may be transferable. Mia, if you could give us thank you, Beverly. Mia, if you could give us some insight into some of your background and how you got to design.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when I left school at 18 and did a few jobs in the civil service, I didn't go to university. I was doing a gap year and I was going to go to university, and then I got involved in the union. I ended up being a full-time union rep for a while in my early 20s, and I helped run the National Women's Committee of our union and did things like that. And then I think I burnt out a bit, and I ended up going across to the private sector, working in BT. And after a little while there, I had a fantastic boss who encouraged me to train in marketing. And so instead of going to university and having that experience, I did 4 years of 2 nights a week, and as well as a full-time job, and lots of homework and extra hours. But I came out with sort of a marketing degree after that, and then worked in BT in marketing and had a great career, you know, like working on the TV side and advertising and everything. And then I think I got to a point where there was a seminal moment when our managing director sort of came into a conference on Harley Davidson and was just trying to whip everyone up about how, you know, we should be excited about making profits for our shareholders. And I just thought, I'm not feeling this at all, and I think I want to go into the public sector. So went into the public sector, not into a marketing role, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door, really. So I came into the public sector and did a number of sort of change management kind of roles, and then I had a friend who said to me, oh, there's a really interesting job that I think you should go for. She says, I don't know what it means. It's called a service designer, but actually all these things that you do, it wants in the job description. So I thought, oh, right, well, so I read up on the double diamond, went for the interview and got the job. And
congratulations.
And so here I am, and I've also run my own business as well. I took a couple of years out and went into events, so I ran a big events business. So I think from understanding that whole customer experience and what people want, and actually really sort of like delivering bespoke experiences around events has you know, been really interesting. And during that time I was a single mum, and I brought up my son on my own and everything. And so, yeah, there's been like lots and lots of things that happen. But I think the thing is that service design, I think there are a number of routes to just service design, and I don't think you should limit yourself. I don't have a design degree, and, you know, doesn't bother me in the slightest, because, you know, I know that I know service design. I've learned it at the coal face, and I've got, you know, incredible empathy when it comes to the whole customer experience and really understanding people. And so, yeah, that's.
Can I ask you, what do you feel your experience of working with unions helped, and how do you think that that has helped you in terms of your role in service design now?
I think it taught me an enormous amount of respect for people, to listen to their stories. I mean, when you're a union rep, you do quite a lot of casework, you know, and so people who have maybe not been treated very well by the management, or people that have just got, you know, some kind of problems, and it really helps you develop empathy and develop really good listening skills, and understand that we've all got different stories that we can bring, and we've all got different skills that can come into the mix. So yeah, I think that's what it taught me.
Yeah. I think, yes, Beverly.
Yeah, I'd like to add on, I can really resonate with what Mia is saying. I also have experience of being a union rep, and it does help, and plus as well with my background in psychology, it does give you, put you in a better position, if you like, to take on, to emphasize with the way how people, or what's happening out there. And for me, it was about, well, is this fair? This is not right. How can things be done better so that users have a better experience? So having the not only interpersonal, but intrapersonal skills, being active listening and being flexible in your approach and the way how you do things really does help you when you're thinking about design for users.
And I think for both of you, what I'm seeing is that there was also this thing about being able to ask the right questions at the right time to elicit the answers is a really powerful skill that is not exclusive to the world of design. Daniel, if you could share with us your background and how you got into design.
Yes, so I loved both your ladies' answers. Really interesting to see your backgrounds. My life's a bit of a squiggly career in terms of career. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, that'll probably tell definitely a tale as well. So yes, first of all, if you look at the survey, I wish I could have ticked all the boxes. So I wish I could have ticked other. I could have ticked just doing things on the job or just by university, really. I'm probably, should I say, I'm 8 years into my career now, but I actually started probably service design in the last 5 years. I actually started in university, did entrepreneurship management. People laughed at me and said it was a fake degree, but it was actually really interesting. I got to learn about small businesses and everything really around how to operate and manage a business. And funnily enough, what did I decide to do? I decided to work as an innovation consultant for a large technology company. But that's where I started building out my key skills in terms of design thinking, listening to customers, developing products and services that are new in the marketplace after a while. 2 years down the line, the whole team was disbanded. So it was either stay inside the organization and move to change management or try something myself. So I took out a career to actually evolve and grow as I go. I did a master's part-time in managing innovation. It really helped me understand what service design was. And I realized, 1 minute, it might be quite easy to pivot into service design, because a lot of the skills I've acquired in my first 2 to 3 years in the real work world is actually service design. I just need to change 1 or 2 aspects of it. So long story short, now I've got a portfolio career. So 7% of my time I work with large corporations, so the likes of Legos, Barclays, Twinings, Tesco Bank, you name it. I'm doing some work with BSI, the British Standards Institute at the moment, 4 days a week. And in my spare time, or should I say what feeds my soul, if that makes sense, going back to Mia's point, where you just couldn't really vibe with giving billion-dollar organizations extra million a year at all. I work a lot with startups and social enterprises to make sure that they're actually creating new solutions that actually solve the needs of their local and global users in general. And going back to Beverly's point as well, I'm someone that has dyslexia myself. So heroes like yourself that have supported people with learning disabilities have been really beneficial over time. And this goes out to anyone that's in the audience at the moment. Maybe people might say you might not be right for a certain role, or you're different, or you just don't fit in. Lean into that. I think in this world as well, we need more different people that think different, that accept themselves over time. That's so important, whether you're probably a more mature service designer or someone that's just starting out their career. There's always time to change and grow and learn over time, really. That's really key. Rather than getting bitter, always try to get better.
Yeah.
Little something for me.
Rather than get bitter, get better. And thank you, Daniel, because that leads right into the next kind of topic theme, is around the fact that all of you made a decision to step in, to lean into this area of service design. And given that the theme of this whole festival is about equity and diversity and inclusion, what were your views? What did you see as you were deciding to make that journey in? And because we're going to have a break after this question and then follow up. But I'm really quite interested in that at some point you all made a decision to step into this world. And what were you seeing? Because my question, I suppose the question is, did you see yourself reflected in that industry in any way when you made that decision? And who would like to answer first?
I'll answer
Yep.
first. And the short answer is no, definitely not. And what I saw was lots of younger people who were right at the beginning of their careers, that it was predominantly whites and predominantly middle class, university educated, and you know, had gone by very traditional routes and ended up, you know, with some sexy design degree and not so much life experience. So yeah, I didn't see anybody like me, and but it just made me think, right, okay, I'm getting in here, you know, whether you like it or not. And so I went to lots of networking events and the service design lab in London, and just kept going and kept seeing people and talking to them, and gradually I gained confidence, and I think also doing some courses as well to actually say to myself, no, my place is here, you know. And I think education's important in that, whether it's formal education or something. There's something about saying to yourself, no, actually, I am taking my place at the table and I completely deserve it, even if I haven't come through the degree route at the RCA like you have. I'm just as deserving and I'm just as able.
Yeah, because I remember one of the themes, one of the ideas or topics that came up when we spoke in the pre-call was around this idea of the imposter syndrome. You know, about tackling that as you're also stepping into a space where you are most likely I'm not going to use the word, most likely othered. I try not to use the word minority. We're stepping into a space where you are most likely othered, not only in terms of the way that you're working or the environment, but also just having those conversations. Beverly, to you, you know, what did you see when you started to make that decision, given your son was already running a service design agency, a studio, but what else did you see that made you still want to step in?
I would say that is down to my son, because he is such a, how should I put it, an active person, want to go out there and save the world kind of person, and make sure that everything is great for the human experience. But like Mia was saying, when you walk into working with him on some of the projects, being thrown in at the deep end, where basically you did see mainly, not necessarily just men, but they were all basic white people. They were, apart from my son's company or studio, because we are a team of 4 Black people. You didn't see that diversity at all. Did I think that I would end up in something called service design? Absolutely not, as far as I was concerned. My career was ended. It was time for me to sit down, put up my foot and relax somewhere else. No. You didn't see myself doing service design, but you know, I got so motivated and excited about the things that I was seeing, even though it wasn't equal. But for me, you bring that equity, if you like, through what you do, and being who you are and remembering who you are designing for. So yeah, it's a really exciting and interesting space, and yeah, I like being here.
Thank you. And Daniel?
Yes, so I always like to start with my why first of all. So why was I found, and this probably comes back to growing up really, you never really get to see people that you admire in positions of power or positions of leadership, if that makes sense. And I find that every time I go into a room, I get judged straight away by how I look and not by my results. That changed over time. But usually I'll get comments in terms of, oh, you look fast, you look like you can sing. Maybe you should cut off your hair. That was quite recent and the first time in my career. So if anyone hasn't got their camera on or can't see me, I've got long flowing locks down to my shoulders. But these are some of the things that I've kind of, I don't see as a problem anymore, because I know my value as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think diversity is a key thing, but it's also talking about neurodiversity as well. So diversity of thought,
Yeah.
whether you're a woman, man, other, whatever race you affiliate with. I think the real value is, how do different people come together and think about problems, and they've got all different perspectives. And going back to both these ladies' points, yes, a lot of the rooms, there are a lot of white, middle class, highly educated people. And I've been in rooms with people that are from Oxford, people that have come from the Royal Arts of RSA, for example, and there's no key difference at all. It's how hard you work. So talent will always beat skill until skill wants to work hard, if that makes sense. So you can be naturally talented, but if someone like you wants to work as hard as you, or may not be as skilled as you, for example, puts in the work, puts in the effort, that's when you can really shine. And anyone in this call can really do that, to be honest. I think that's it. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Yes, and thank you. You're just dropping some lines. That's amazing. Thank you. Look, we're going to take a quick comfort break. So 4 minutes. So if we come back at 10 to, I'll give everybody a few minutes just to stretch their legs, and we'll come back. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to go into a little bit more about each of the speakers, what they're doing now, where are they in the world of design, and how that manifests itself. So yeah, a few minutes, and we will see you back shortly. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So this next section, I thought that what we do is we dive deeper into how each of our panelists, our guests, show up in the world of design now. So what spaces do they occupy? And I think you're going to find this quite interesting because they operate in very different spaces. So I think we will start this time with Mia. If you want to talk a little bit about the world of design and how you show up in that world at this moment.
Yeah, sure. So I work in local government, which is really interesting. I mean, I think that, you know, for some service designers, you know, the area that they think they might want to work in is, you know, sort of like, you know, financial tech or something. But actually, local government and central government is so interesting. There are so many complex, meaty problems to sort out, and you're doing stuff that affects people's lives. and that's a great responsibility. And so in my job, I collaborate with lots of people. Typically local councils offer about 200 different services, and so I will collaborate with colleagues across the organisation to work on different things. So for instance, worked on some public health projects and just about to kick off some more, where we're thinking about, right, well, where public health in the past has been quite traditional and predicated on face-to-face interactions, but how can we bring digital into that mix? How can we really sort of like smooth that end-to-end customer experience? Talking this morning about kicking off a project about air quality, you know, to say, right, okay, well, what can we do to help people who live in deprived areas that have probably got poorer air quality than perhaps some of the leafy parts of our borough? And what can we do? What is there a way that we could help them take control of information about air quality to help them have better health outcomes? So, you know, at the moment, we're just thinking about what the how might we statement be around that, and we'll put that out for tender. And you know, and then there's things like which I touched on briefly earlier about community engagement. You know, how can we make community engagement more equitable? Because in Southwark, we're one of the largest social landlords in London, and the Tenants and Residents Association networks have built themselves up over, you know, the last sort of 30-40 years, and are very strong. But those people that started as activists way back in the day are now a lot older, and they're mostly white, and they're not representative necessarily of the people that they live amongst. And that's not to decry the people who have given up loads of their time and volunteered and everything, but it's just saying that what could we do to sort of like almost disrupt that, so that we've got those traditional networks still, but we've also got people participating in different ways. So I suppose I see my role, you know, as a translator, as a helper, I try and demystify, you know, process, because I know what it's been like. I mean, the first time somebody said ideation to me, I had to go away and look it up and just thought, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, you know. And then, you know, you suddenly realize, well, it's just about sitting in a room and having loads of ideas. And then you think, oh, well, that's great. Well, I do that all the time. Yeah. And I try to explain things to people in ways that they'll understand. I mean, one of my favorite examples is a kitchen. You wouldn't, you know, say that you want a new kitchen, and then next week the people arrive and put a new kitchen in for you. You'd want help, you know, you'd want people to ask you, well, what do you use your kitchen for? What colours do you like? And all those kinds of things. And yet somehow we expect services to just arrive without thinking about how we design them. So I think I spend a lot of time trying to demystify that process, because councils and central governments are very traditional kinds of places, and it can be quite difficult to dismantle, you know, the way that people have thought for a long time. You know, quite a lot of social workers, for example, came into social work because they wanted to help people. Now in 2020, we're in a position where we really want to enable people to help themselves, and because we haven't got the money to provide lots and lots of services. And there's also, you know, thinking has shifted to say that actually we want people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and to, you know, not to treat people as broken, but to treat people as whole, and see how we can enable and support people. So it's getting those kinds of thinkings across. And
really... how do you start those conversations? If you know, just imagine you step into, you know, a council office and you need to convince somebody that service design is the route to take to try and address the problems. How do you start that conversation?
I try and show them what's being done in other services, you know, and try and give them real life examples of, you know, other people, you know, other services like your service, whether it was in the council or whether it was in another council. This is what they did, and these were the results, and this is what they learned from it. And, you know, trying to be real as well, and to show that it wasn't perfect, and, you know, we didn't all, you know, sort of like sit on clouds, and, you know, it was a messy, gritty, authentic kind of process. And this is how we got through it, and this is what we came out with, and this is how we learned. So I think having really honest and authentic conversations with people, and almost like, you know, the government digital service have got a phrase that they used to use, which was like showing the thing, so that you've got, as well as, you know, talking theory and talking strategy, you can also just say, well, we did this and we did this and we did this. Yeah.
And given that we're talking about equity, how do you also make sure that your voice is heard and the voice that you're representing a diverse, not just racially or ethnically diverse, but how do you make sure that your voice is heard when you step into that space? Because I can imagine that can be sometimes quite a challenging conversation to have, or at least to even be seen and be heard.
Yeah, and I think evidence helps an awful lot with that. I think, you know, if you can speak to somebody and they'll just say, oh, well, that sounds really nice and really fluffy, but then if you can say, well, this is what happened, you know, this is what happened in another council when they used service design methods and they were able to, you know, save money, have a better customer experience, you know. So it's just about, you know, building that evidence so that you can show that you triangulate your passion with credibility, and you've got something to back it up with.
And I think that that's what the panelists in the previous session mentioned as well, that data, having the evidence and data is really key. Daniel, over to you now. So can you give us a bit more insight into how you show up? Because I know that you're a freelancer as well, or you class yourself as a freelancer, and you mentioned that you have a portfolio career, which is quite different to Mia being, and Beverly in many ways, being in a fixed place almost.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite lucky because I've been involved in innovation labs. I've worked in large agencies, small agencies. I've worked in large corporations, public, private, startup environments. So I've got a flavor of different areas, and they all perceive service design, and service design means different things to them and the role it plays in terms of creating new value. So that's really important. In terms of showing up and what I do, I'll give you a high level view because I don't want to talk about every single thing I do at the moment because I'll bore you. But let's say, for example, the work I'm doing within BSI is completely different to the stuff I do with startups and social enterprises. So BSI, British Standards Institute, I'm mainly working within the innovation lab, and my role is really to be the communicator, the empath, so to empathize with different stakeholders, but also to educate the large organization because they're very stuck in their ways. It's the sales team, the marketing teams, the finance teams, they think they already know their customers or they already know the problem. But I'm there to show them, and this goes back to Mia's point, is how can we actually design something with evidence? So use data as our North Star. And that's really valuable, and not a lot of companies actually see that. And by showing them past examples, like that was already expressed already, giving them opportunities to actually be involved in the whole process from the beginning, from day one, so we can start a problem framing session and get all different people from different departments to come together to really identify what opportunities we can focus on, and then do some research and get them involved as well. Listen to some interviews, or even train them up to actually interview some customers that they thought they knew very well, but when they actually speak to them, they think, oh, we thought you had something else, or we thought you believe in something else, for example, testing those assumptions and going against them or confirming those assumptions so we can actually develop new ideas, new services, new experiences that really create value. I'd say moving slightly differently to a different area, if you focus more on the community side. So I do a lot of work with OpenIDEA and a lot of other local communities as well. Some agencies actually specialize in social impact, and that's all around how to facilitate and upskill people. So how can you get people that are really passionate about a specific idea, bring them together to solve a problem, and see how systems thinking and open innovation can really get them to accelerate those ideas. So as most of you know, no one individual can create one idea by themselves. That invented here syndrome is completely gone in the world today. Well, I hope it is, but we actually challenge that even further by getting local community members to come up with ideas and figure out how they can hopefully scale that up in the future. We've worked with some amazing organizations in the past, such as Vodafone, Nike, to develop those ideas, really looking at systems thinking, circular economy, and many other key challenges. And before I take up too much time again, focusing on startups. So once again, I go in, mentor, and actually work on projects with startups. And sometimes it's just with the founder or it's with a small team, but we look at problems very early on, because as a startup, they are moving quite quickly. And sometimes they think too quickly in terms of they're the founder, they come up with a problem. It's something that they think is really important and they want to change it, but you need to validate that in the wider market and the wider world. Service design has a role to play in that. And also you've got to think about the social impact of your solution, and also think about something that's not really talked about a lot, the moral and ethical challenges your solution coming into the ecosystem or different communities, ways of working and interacting over time. So there's so many different things you can really focus on just using service design. So it's not just working in a financial organization, like I think Mia said before. There are so many different possibilities out there.
I mean, the two things I want to pick up on that you mentioned there. One was that you mentioned that lots of different clients will have a different idea of what service design is. Could you elaborate a bit more on that, and how do you then tackle that conversation, or how do you then get them to a point of where you are having this this conversation where everybody understands what they're talking about? Because you can imagine lots of different people, lots of different ideas. How do you get that to the ground level? That's the first one.
It kind of echoes what I said at the beginning of this call, which was around people really focus on the latter part of service design. They just think service design is, okay, then you're doing the UI or the UX side of things. You're just here to make something pretty, stay in the corner when all the big people, all the grown-ups are speaking, and then when we want you to tell us what color we want it to be, then you have your say. As service designers, we also have a research and strategic role to play. We facilitate conversations across complex organizations as well, and different people within that organization to bring out the right solutions. How I have overcome that over time is going back to kind of Mia's point, showing them real examples and actually showing them what to expect from a service design project over time. So I always find that there's that reality versus expectation side of things. People always have this fine-tuned point of, oh, we think service design is going to change the world. No, some of the best service design that I've seen or that I've been a part of, no one could even see it. It's completely invisible. And I see a couple of people nodding in the audience, because that's really what service design is. It's making those changes that makes a system, a product, an experience, a service so fluid that it feels like it's just natural almost over time. And the last point as well, whenever you start a new project, get all the key stakeholders, all the key sponsors into one room so they're all aligned before you start a project, so they understand why you are there in the first place, and also what value and how all of them can actually be a part of the whole project over time. Because the worst thing as a service designer is getting halfway through a project and everyone's misaligned, or starting a project when all this fuss has been discussed but they're not letting you know about it.
Yeah, thank you. And then the second point, the second question I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the moral and ethical responsibility of designers. Could you, given that this session, the theme of all of this is about equity, could you talk a little bit more about, and maybe give some anecdotes about your own experience and understanding of the ethic and the power, responsibility, and then I'm going to come to you, Beverly, afterwards, the power, responsibility and morals and ethics of a service designer?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if Beverly and Mia, if you wanted to jump in this question as well, because I think it's quite a broad one, but actually quite an interesting one. And then Beverly, I will come back to you.
Fantastic. I'm actually going to get the ladies to go first if they want to, of course, because I think I've been talking too much and I hate the sound of my own voice. So I feel sorry for the audience.
So, right, I'm making sure I catch up with everybody. So you are doing fine.
Perfect. Would you want me to go first, or maybe later?
Carry on, because then I'm going to go to Beverly and then back to Mia.
I think it is a case by case.
But thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you. Just thank you for being here, to be honest. It's always a pleasure and privilege. But to go from my own point of view, I think it depends on who you speak to. But from a startup point of view, there's a lack of empathy and moral compass sometimes for founders. Yes, they're brilliant. Yes, they want to change the world. But I'll give you a case, for example. Let's say if a startup founder has been working 5 long years to basically get their baby of an idea into something that's actually scalable and work in the market when there's actually something that's tangible. Let's say a large, I'd say less ethical technology company comes into play, I won't say any names at all, and says, oh, we'll buy it off you for X amount of millions of pounds. We're going to do X, Y, and Z with that data and with your customer base. What do you do as a founder? You've got an obligation for not just yourself as a founder, but to your team, to your customers, to your future customers, and also to the overall community as well. And this is where service design comes in terms of ethics. It's understanding how all different stakeholders are involved in that whole process of thinking. So any action a business, a startup, a social enterprise puts into place, you have to think about the broader picture, the vast picture in terms of how is everyone going to be impacted and making sure that everyone is served in the right way.
Thank you. Beverly, I would love you to share, how you now show up in the world of service design, and touching on that conversation around the ethics, morals and power, especially given the type of business that you work in at the moment.
Yeah, well, my role in the design industry is threefold, basically, in that I work with COMUZI, their design studio. I work with M&C Saatchi Saturday School, and I also work with Mentoring Black Business on the Mentoring Black Business program. So my role with COMUZI started maybe about 15 months ago. So, and I've worked with lots of well-known organizations on projects and stuff ranging from things like digital health, gig economy, AI, that kind of thing. But then when you go, so that's been quite exciting, and that's given me that starting point as to what to expect. And COMUZI as a company, they try to be really authentic in the things that they do, showing that integrity, if you like, because integrity is so important for your business. And we don't forget the people that we are serving, basically. Going into like Daniel's question in terms of COMUZI work, in terms of ethics, we always try to lay the groundwork as to this is us, this is what we do, obviously showing examples and so on and so forth. But we also kind of like kick off projects with those definitions of terms. What do they mean? Because as we know, everybody have a different definition for something. So, or what does it mean to you? What do you want to get out of it? So we will start off doing those kind of things so that it is clear moving forward what everybody thinks about what it is. And perhaps at some point we might decide, okay, we like this one, this is better, so we'll go with this definition or term or what meaning or whatever for that. Moving into M&C Saatchi Saturday School, that's aimed at entrepreneurs in terms of people from underrepresented groups, basically. So particularly the target audience is Black people of all ages. And that has kicked off quite well in terms of teaching the community the basics of business, or all those processes that are underpinning business in terms of people wanting to start up and wanting to find out a little bit more of how they move forward. Now, in that role, in terms of in that design space, if you like, my role there is educational specialist. So I applied to get accreditation for the courses that we offer, and I facilitate, or I support the facilitators, like to ensure that whatever activities and stuff that they do are that they're inclusive in their design of such things. And the latest element, actually, which is quite interesting, is the mentoring program, and that is that space is all about embracing the entrepreneurial mindset, if you like, and it's primarily set up to be a hub for businesses, and it focuses on improving the educational experiences, outcomes, and life options for Black businesses. It doesn't, although we do focus on Black businesses are our primary concerns, because there's not that equality in terms of careers, etc., in this space. But it's about giving them those options and giving those tools necessary that they can move forward with their businesses. And we do that by harmonizing the differences, if you like, through a shared values and experiences. So in that space, I am the project coordinator. So my role is to evaluate the services and resources and stuff like that, so that we can serve a wider community or the wider business community, and provide those opportunities for individuals to receive mentorship, if you like, from various experts in the different fields. You know, we've got design, you've got catering, all whatever your thoughts are, your ideas are about building a business, this space can help you to get there. So we try to make the space or the service equitable, if you like, by providing opportunities to help people build the connections inside or outside their personal and professional space.
So essentially, in some ways, what you're doing is it sounds like what you're doing is almost training those people to become designers, or to think like designers in many ways, to think about systems, to recognize systems, and to think about how they build their business, not just the products, but the services and how they engage with other people.
Absolutely. Again, with design, it's not just about the one person working by themselves. So if there are spaces, because there isn't a forum or space, if you like, for the majority of entrepreneurs coming up out there today, they can't use traditional routes to say, oh, I'm going to come out of a university or whatever, and I'm going to go into this road. Those traditional routes are not there anymore. So they have to basically think how they can put food on the table. So you find a lot of people these days, they're going out there trying things for themselves, trying to start up their own business and move forward and be successful with that. And both at Saturday School and the Black Mentoring Program, we try to help them to get to where they want to go in whatever space they want to be in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Mia, given that you work at Southwark Council, or work at and with Southwark Council, going back to that conversation, that question around ethics and power and responsibility, how do you see that playing out within service design, within the council, and within the role that you play?
I think it's about taking ownership, and it's realising that you have to be crystal clear on what a service design process and methodology can deliver and what it can't, and how you'll be working with people. So I think setting up the framework to say, right, okay, well, you're not going to give me the problem and I'm going to go away and sort it out and bring it back to you, sort of 3 months later. It's about saying, right, well, we have to work together, we have to co-produce. So it's almost about like getting that project team together and agreeing with them the way that we're going to work together. And that's not me saying, right, this is the way we work together. This is about everyone co-producing a way of working together. And then I think when it comes to doing user research, I think that's, apart from just getting the obvious things like consent forms when you're interviewing people, I think it's really, really important to set expectations, because sometimes if people are really annoyed with the council and the council hasn't spoken to them, you might be the first person from the council that has spoken to them for years, and so you just go woof, and They want to tell you everything, and you've got to be prepared for that, and you've got to give them space to let off steam, and then you have to be skillful enough to bring that conversation round. But you have to be very clear with them about what you can do, and that you won't be able to necessarily sort out their mold problem in their flat that they've had for some time. But what you can do is you can make sure that information goes back to the right people and everything. And especially, I mean, I did some work with teenage people who had learning disabilities a few years ago, and it was tough because they saw someone from the council who was willing to listen and willing to show up places in the evenings and everything, and they started sort of seeing me as a friend who would sort a whole load of stuff out for them. And and so I had to make sure that every single time I saw them, I restated what I could do and what I couldn't do, because that user group had a particular set of needs that meant that some of them were vulnerable and some of them were very trusting, and I needed to redraw those boundaries time and time again. So, but yeah, you've got to treat people as equals and not treat people as broken, which I think I said before. That they've got information, they've got resources that you need, and so you should be treating it as an equal relationship.
I think
and respecting people.
Thank you. So I can see the link between what you do and what Beverly does, in that you're helping people to understand their own relationship with the products and services, but also it ties, what you just said ties nicely into Sandra's question. Sandra, did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself, or are you happy for me to go? I can't see.
I don't mind asking the question.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. My question was, what are your thoughts on the limits of empathy in design?
Thank you, Sandra. So I think that follows quite nicely on from what you were saying, Mia, but for any of you.
Well, I'll go. I think it's about honesty. I think you can be empathetic with people, but you have to be clear that you won't necessarily be able to do everything that they want. And that's where I think that where user research should be around surfacing what user needs are, not necessarily what people's wants are. I was working on a project a few years ago. We were putting together an industrial strategy about how we were going to spend the Section 106 money that developers need to give to councils to benefit the local community more directly. And there was one particular housing estate where people said, oh, we want a swimming pool, because they had done a consultation with them and asked them what they want. And what they wanted was a swimming pool. But then when I went back in and did some interviews and user need research, and what they wanted is they wanted to have somewhere they could exercise and have better health outcomes. And so in the end, we did a nice sort of walking and running track around the estate and planted it up nicely and everything. And so, that was listening to what people's needs were rather than wants. So I think you've got to be crystal clear about that.
I think that somebody, I'm not sure if it was this session or the previous one, that one of the panelists mentioned that they see their role as a designer also as a translator, of being able to translate the information into something else. Beverly, did you want to answer that question as well? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the limits of empathy in design?
I don't think that there are many limits, to be honest, in the sense that when you're designing for somebody, your client, partner, or users, or whatever, you kind of set those ground rules from the beginning. So it's you kind of make it clear. I mean, like Mia talked about honesty. You do have to be honest. You do have to show that you are authentic and so on. And it's not about, it's about what the user wants in terms of how the service is going to meet the needs of the user. And I think that is done in a collaborative way, so that you kind of perhaps not meet the needs for everybody, but for the majority, to be honest. So I think that empathy does, you do emphasize, and also you're taking from your research, you're taking on board all those comments that are said by the users, and you use those insights to better inform what you're going to come up with at the end of the day. So don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that's how
I was looking for your answer. So whatever answer you gave, that is a great answer. Thank you. Daniel, what are your thoughts on the question?
So both the ladies already answered it in great detail, but I probably would rather reframe the question in terms of how we can reuse empathy to make service design a little bit more powerful in the people we serve. So yes, the end user is really important, and it's the type of solution that we're trying to design for in the first place. We've got to think about all different stakeholders we're trying to work with as well. So the salespeople that say, oh no, we don't want to change the way we operate because a lot of our commissions and bonuses are based on that. You've got to empathize with them and work with them over time. It might be working with an organization or a department that's extremely stressed out. How can you give them more time to breathe and think about how you can create wins for everyone in the environment or community or organization? So I reframe it around the limits to how can you spread around empathy in the right places so everyone feels heard, and you can create a solution that's more connected, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to a different topic. Well, no, actually, connected. How do you feel the pandemic has impacted your abilities as a designer? Not just as your abilities within what you're doing at the moment, but also the future role of designers. How do you think that COVID and the pandemic and everything has changed that? And any one of you who would like to answer that first? Okay, Daniel, thank you.
So I think, and I'm going to go on a loop around this, so please stop me if I waffle too much. But this whole pandemic, I think it's impacting us on a systematic level as well. So using systems thinking again, it's making the poorest, the most vulnerable lives worse. But the people that are comfortable and privileged, and I'm one of them, if that makes sense, I can work remotely, I can run workshops, I can design things, I can carry out research remotely. But there's a corner of our communities that we can see and can't see that are really being heavily affected from a mental health point of view. I'm going back to Beverly's point, from a business point of view. I strongly believe, and I think Beverly can probably agree on this, is that starting your own business is a great way to get yourself out of poverty and to empower yourself in general. I've seen people in my life that have started in lower working class environments and go into the top percent. I can see a thumbs up there, so there's some agreement there.
Yeah.
And that's so important as well. But I think during COVID, mental health, building resilience around our communities is so important. And I'm going to plug OpenIGO actually, because we actually ran 2 really good sprints around thinking about how COVID has impacted us. First of all was around business resilience. So how can you pivot, not just to make sure that you're making profit, but serving your local communities? So it's profit, planet, and people. And the second sprint, design sprint, was around how can you reimagine education? So if any of you have children, or if any of you are in education at the moment, looking at a screen for multiple hours a day, or if you're working and if you've got a little one running around and they want to learn as well, or you're trying to educate them, that's really hard. How can we solve these complex challenges for all these different stakeholders? If you have, let's say, I don't want to use the word learning disability, because I don't think it is. I think you think differently.
Yeah.
If you've got dyslexia, or if you've got any type of difference in terms of way of learning. But if a partner or someone, even yourself, has a learning difference, for example, how can you leverage that, or how can you work around that so they can still learn, still keep up, and even thrive at that time? There's all these different nuances that we need to think about, especially around COVID. Yeah. But my time's up now. Anyone else?
I'm just going to do a personal bit there, and then I'm going to go to Beverly, because I know I saw the thumbs up, the real and the virtual thumbs up. So I have recently become the chair of Mental Health First Aid UK, and my remit is anti-racism, intersectionality, diversity, and all of that. And what I'm doing is I'm deliberately going to take a service design approach to how we look at mental health and well-being, especially because of everything that's happening in the pandemic. And so I just wanted to throw that in there, that service design, just because I'm not operating on a day-to-day basis as a service designer, we can still take service design thinking and embed it into how we address problems, and especially in this, and the hands are coming up so you can see that I'm really enthused by this, but and how we can take service design thinking and put that into how, looking at how we help not just ourselves but help others through this current pandemic, because it's not over yet, and you know there's a lot more to come. So I think that it's really important to understand, and that's why I wanted to share that we can take these ideas and look at how we can try and solve some bigger systemic problems, especially the ones that are now, we don't know where we're going to end up, but we can start to think about that now. So Beverly, I just wanted to go back to you because I saw you had a couple of thumbs up when Daniel was speaking about entrepreneurship, you know, helping people out of poverty and all sorts of things, and design. So over to you.
Absolutely, it is the way forward, and I do take up Daniel's point about mental health, because you know, there's research out there to say that 1 in 4 people, and particularly BAME individuals, are more impacted by mental health problems. So one of the things we did in terms of the pandemic, it made us look at redesign actually some of the things that we do, and we realized that that is an important element, because you haven't got your mental health with all the taught therapies and stuff like this today. They are just overwhelmed. So where do you go to get that support if you need it, you know? So we thought about this, and one of the things that we incorporated in Saturday school is a well-being at work. I mean, that's what the unit's called, but I mean, it's useful for everybody. It gives you strategies of how you can help yourself, because at the end of the day, regardless to what kind of program you go through, it's about you accepting that you have a problem and seeing how you can best deal with that problem. So we give ideas and strategies of how you can do that for yourself. And some of them are just simple little things that you can do in terms of helping yourself, you know, get your positivity back, get your mojo back, and so on. So yeah, we also been running, particularly with the Mentoring Black Businesses program, is that, of course, obviously a lot of people are on, and it's not just Black mentors that are there. Mentors of all walks of life are there to support up and coming entrepreneurs. But we also do an anti-racism unit, whereby you teach, you know, not teach, but you're asking people to question their values, to question their thinking. Because a lot of the time, people don't necessarily realize that they're being, or they're using the wrong language that are making you feel uncomfortable, until it's actually pointed out or they've seen it in a different way. So pointing out those little things and asking people to rethink how they would do things has become quite important, particularly in this time. I mean, yes, it's better to have that face-to-face conversation, but in these times you can't. So we're trying to create and reimagine the spaces where those kind of things are on offer to help people get through, or to help cope with the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I think that leads into, I'm just aware of the time as well. I think that leads really nicely into the next question, which is really around the future of design and service design. And especially given that we are in this, everybody uses the word unprecedented times, and this current climate, you know, where the norm, what we understood as normal, people talk about the new normal. I mean, I roll my eyes about that, but that's a whole different conversation. But we're in this current climate. Where do you see, how do you see well, I suppose there's two questions in one. I'm trying to wrap them up in together. But one question is, where do you see the future of design should be? Where do you think that given that we're in this time of creating new futures, you know, and we're helping to design the futures that we want, where, if you wanted to see where the future of design could be and what it should look like, what would that look like to you? And where are we now? So almost trying to talk about where's the gap, to give people an idea of what work needs to be done to get us to that point. So I'm going to go to Mia to start with that one. Thank you.
I think the theme of the conference is equity, and I do think that that's a really important point. I think we found in Southwark Council that during COVID, the amount of inequity that was highlighted was vast, because if you looked at the mainstream media, you would have thought that everyone was doing Joe Wicks and everyone had a laptop in front of them in the family and were baking sourdough and everything, and it just looked lovely, but we knew that there were lots of families who didn't have a laptop at all, were sharing one phone, and kids weren't able to do their schoolwork, and there were so many things, and the gap was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think we feel like, going forward, in Southwark, we're now talking about our response and recovery. Well, we've had our response period, but it's like our recovery period, after, well, not after, but, sort of as COVID starting to tail off, hopefully. And so we're in the position now where we're just thinking, well, how can we respond to, some of the equities that have been very starkly highlighted, and what can we do, and how can we use design as, a strategic tool to help us get into those operational services and smooth out the customer experience for everybody, so it's not just the people that are, completely switched on with their laptops and full pelt broadband that have a really good experience, but everyone has a good experience, even if you're standing outside. We had a lady at the beginning of lockdown who used to sit in a deck chair outside one of her libraries because she wanted the broadband. And we were going to turn it off, but we just thought, oh no, just like leave it, because she's obviously using it, and other people were doing the same. And so we've got a big program, our digital infrastructure program, about putting like full fibre broadband on all of our estates. So we've got about 100,000 people living on our estates, so we're putting fibre out there, and just sort of working with lots of different public sector and private sector partners to work out how we can just make this a lot more equitable. So I think, and all of those projects are using very much design first ethos to get us in there to actually do public goods.
That's amazing. Thank you. Daniel.
Yes, so yes, you can hear me, that's fine, just making sure I'm not on mute. Always a rookie mistake, but I completely agree with what Mia's just said, but I would always go with start with the mindset first and changing that all the time, because some people are usually just so focused on developing a solution, or okay, I'm going to use service design, it's just this. You've got to think about and what is the next step really, and for me that's really around thinking about the problem in different ways and also designing with evidence. Those are some of the key things, and also collaborating as well. And how I see the future of almost service design is, and I've already talked about systems thinking already, so I don't want to gather on about it, but it's also future casting and thinking about the future as well. So what would the next 5, 15, 20, 50, 100 years look like really? And as service designers, as a community, how can we shape a better future? And that's looking at different lenses. It's looking at the planet, it's looking at people, it's looking at processes, it's looking at technology, it's looking at how we structure things in general, whether it is our local councils, for example, or the startup ecosystem, or how we ourselves all 30...
Can't hear you.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So yes. So I'll repeat myself quickly. How people process technology, communities, how we can all come together to really create something better for the future using systems thinking and future forecasting over time. And that really helps us figure out what is possible rather than, oh, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I definitely agree with that we are in a time where, in the pre-coronavirus, a lot of us spent a lot of time being nostalgic and thinking, how can we recreate the past? Or so far focused on the the future of work, the future of this, the future of everything, that nobody was really living in the present, and we've all been dumped quite squarely in the present. We have to exist in the present. And so it's now thinking that gives us an opportunity, as devastating as the pandemic is, it also gives us an opportunity to create those new futures by focusing on what are the real needs that people have right now. It's almost going back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in that what are the basic things that people need to survive, and how do you build up from that, and recognizing each other as human, which is why my approach to design is always the bottom-up approach of including those people that you're trying to design for as part of the process, and helping to redefine the helping to redefine the problem. So as a designer, coming with a problem, working with people on the ground level to help them help you redefine the problem, and then you can start to design with them. So I'm always talking about in collaboration. But Beverly, over to you. Where do you see the future of it should be?
For us, in terms of, I find particularly with recently and being in the times that we're in now, we have to be redefining, if you like, and rethinking the way how we do certain things in terms of your structures and your processes. For example, we used to have a particular format of how we would give feedback to the client partners and so on, and we find that that doesn't necessarily is useful, or that format is useful for everybody. So you have to think of new ways. So for me, in the future, you do have to continue in creating these new ways of getting the message out there, or to meet the needs of the people that you're working for. One of the things we did recently was to give the feedback and the insights and so on from the research, do that through a playbook, which was quite interesting because we never thought of doing that before. But I don't know the outcome of that, or whether it went down well, but it was in collaboration with the people that we were working with at the time. In terms of my role in designing the future, while I'm loving it so much, I'm going to continue my journey in developing myself, getting my name out there under my own rights, and and see how we can move forward, keep making the space interesting. And I think basically that there's a lot of creative people out there, and they're coming up with creative ways to solve problems in a sustainable way. So I think that the space is going to be really, really interesting. I also feel that with all this Black Lives Matter going on, etc., that a lot of organizations are going to look at the way they do things, and perhaps rather than having that top-down approach that they're used to, the traditional stuff that don't help anybody but themselves, they're going to start using a lot more bottom-up methodology in terms of, satisfying more people.
Can you hear me now? Yes. I completely agree. Completely agree. We have come to the end of our time. And I think the way, thank you to all our speakers, Beverly, Daniel, and Mia. I think my summation of this is that, and I think it ties in really well with a lot of the work that I do, my approach to working, and now understanding as systems designers, that recognizing that as humans, we're all problem solvers. And innovation is problem solving. So we all have the potential to be innovators if we're given the skills and the support to be able to do that. And I think that that is my approach to systems design, to innovation, to problem solving. I applaud all of you for being here, and I think that it's we are in interesting and exciting times that we can come together in spaces like this to have these types of conversations, because I'm not sure how deep some of these conversations would have been prior to the lockdown, prior to the pandemic, and then the subsequent Black Lives Matter. So I am appreciative of the fact that we're given the space and the time and people show up to engage in these types of conversations. And I just hope that everybody takes at least one thing away from this and does something differently.